Susie Wiles had one job. Don't tell a magazine everything. And she told the magazine everything, which included telling Vanity Fair that the president acts like an alcoholic and that one of his top advisors was doing ketamine at work and sleeping in a sleeping bag, and that they're lying about why they're bombing boats. Susie is Trump's right hand, and she just confirmed all of our worst suspicions about the White House and then was like, meh, this article is unfair. And real quick, I'm Lauren Peritra. Please take a moment to subscribe, turn notifications on, and prepare to hype this video because everything just keeps getting more and more sideways, and it takes all of us to call out and combat this nonsense. And I'm not kidding. Susie Wiles spent an entire year telling a reporter that Trump acts like an alcoholic, that Elon's doing ketamine at work, and oh, by the way, we're totally lying about why we're bombing Venezuela. And then she read the article and was like, this is so unfair. So let me get right into it. So Wiles tells Vanity Fair that Trump has an alcoholic's personality. Now, Trump doesn't actually drink alcohol. His brother had addiction issues, so he's avoided alcohol his entire life. But Wiles is like, yeah, he's got the personality though. And her evidence for this diagnosis, she once helped her dad get sober. So apparently she's an expert, but she does actually have a lot of experience in close proximity to alcoholics and their tendencies. Can you imagine your boss's assistant going to People magazine and being like, yeah, my boss has the personality of a drunk person suffering from the disease of addiction? I would know because of my dad. That's what happened at the White House. And then she gets into Elon Musk. And listen, we all know Elon Musk is an asshole, but Wiles just confirms that he's been using ketamine in a lot of it. And she says he's an avowed user. And that was literally the word she used. And she also said he's been sleeping in a sleeping bag in government buildings during the daytime. Great. The richest man on earth with apartheid wealth is camping out in the executive office on drugs while he was busy dismantling our federal agencies. And the chief of staff mentions it to a fashion magazine. Like it's a fun, quirky little detail. Oh, Elon. Yeah, he sleeps in a bag and does ketamine. Destroyed USAD. Bit of an odd duck, though, she said. How is this real? And she also explains that we're just bombing boats for fun now, too. Because, you know, those active strikes in Venezuela, the administration keeps telling everyone it's about stopping drugs. Wiles straight up told Vanity Fair that no, actually, Trump just wants to keep on blowing up boats until Maduro cries uncle. So it's a regime change. We're trying to overthrow a foreign leader, and she just said it like it was nothing. The official story is drugs, but the chief of staff is out here admitting we're just going to keep bombing until their president gives up. What a strategy. And she said this to a reporter while still employed by the White House as their chief of staff. Wiles said that Trump's not on a Retribution tour, but then in the same exact breath, she admits that the prosecution of New York AG Letitia James was Retribution. And after going after Comey, she's like, oh, it does look a little vindictive. Girl, pick a lane. It's either Retribution or it's not. You can't say no Retribution is happening and then immediately list all the Retribution that's happening. Also, a judge threw both of these cases out in November, so that went well. And throwing the attorney general under the bus. Oh, and she completely torched Attorney General Pam Bondi. She says Pam Bondi is whiffed by the Epstein files and that the release is not going to happen. And by giving people binders full of nothingness, that she's just staying busy. Bondi claimed that there was a client list on her desk. Wiles said that there's no client list, and it sure as hell wasn't on her desk. That's the attorney general, your colleague, somebody you're probably going to see every week, and you're just getting publicly called incompetent and a liar in Vanity Fair. How do you even make eye contact after that? And then she goes on and confirms so gently that Trump is in the Epstein files. She tries to make it sound casual, like, oh yeah, they were just young, single playboys together, and Trump didn't do anything. He didn't do anything awful.
President Trump is what she called the Epstein file, but she says he's not in the file doing anything awful. Talk to me about that part of this interview.
Yeah, she also said that she underestimated the swirling controversy about the Epstein files, but specifically as it relates to President Trump. This is what Susie Wiles had to say. She said, Trump is in the file, and we know he is in the file. He's not in the file doing anything awful. She said he was on Epstein's plane. He's on the manifest. There were, sort of young, single, whatever. I know it's a passé word, but sort of young, single playboys together. Just a very striking comment to hear from somebody so close to the president.
Hold on. young single playboys. That's the official White House spin on the president's friendship with a convicted sex trafficker of children. Not they barely knew each other. Not that they were, there a few times at the same events together. No, they were playboys together. The bar is in fucking hell. Oh, and she casually drops that JD Vance, the vice president, has been on a conspiracy theorist train for a decade.
She also calls Vice President Vance a conspiracy theorist for a decade.
She says his whole never Trump to MAGA thing was sort of political. You don't say. So she's saying the VP's entire belief system is fake, and he's been peddling conspiracy theories for 10 years. And she said this to Vanity Fair. About the second highest elected official in the country. Real good clip of them coming up. And after all of this publishes, Wiles posts on X, her first post in over a year, calling it a disingenuous framed hit piece. But sister, these are your words. You sat there for these interviews voluntarily for an entire year. Nobody ambushed you. What did you think? You were going to be in a glamorous profile piece on yourself? Read the room, honey. You could have stopped at any point and been like, actually, maybe I shouldn't tell this reporter that Trump acts like an alcoholic. But you kept going for 12 months. And now you're surprised it looks bad? How are you in charge of anything? Then the press secretary comes out, pops out and says, President Trump has no greater or more loyal advisors than Susie. The entire administration is grateful for Susie's steady leadership.
A series of articles in Vanity Fair on Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, and the president's inner circle. I mean, clearly there was a lot of cooperation between the White House and Vanity Fair on this because there's numerous interviews that Susie Wiles had with the writer over the course of pretty much a year. Portraits were taken of his inner circle, including her, JD Vance, Stephen Miller. I mean, it looks like the White House was working hand in glove with Vanity Fair. But what happened? What went wrong?
Well, look, I would just echo my boss, Susie Wiles, who is the best chief of staff in our nation's history, working for the greatest president in our nation's history, and that this was, unfortunately, another attempt at fake news by a reporter who was acting disingenuously and really did take the chief's words out of context. But I think most importantly, the bias of omission was ever present throughout this story. The reporter omitted all of the positive things that Susie and our team said about the president and the inner workings of the White House. And as Susie said today, it's deeply unfortunate that happened, but it won't distract us from making America great again.
I'm sorry. Steady leadership? Steady? This woman just spent a year confirming every chaotic thing we suspected about this administration to a major magazine. She admitted to war crimes, retribution, lies, drug use, people sleeping in sleeping bags, but sure, steady. And no greater advisor. Like, what's the metric? Most damaging quotes per interview, best at accidentally admitting to crimes, most colleagues thrown under the bus. I genuinely want to know how we're measuring greatest here. This is their whole playbook, right? Like, don't address whatever actually happens. Just speak it in absolutes. Trump is the greatest president in history. Susie is the greatest chief of staff in history. Everyone is the most loyal person who has ever lived. And now, this is my favorite part. JD Vance comes out slamming people who will say one thing to the president's face and then do the exact opposite.
And I've seen so many people who will say one thing to the president's face, Democrats and Republicans, and then will do the exact opposite behind the scenes. You know why I really, you know what they are, and you know why I really love Susie Wiles? Because Susie is who she is in the president's presence. She's the same exact person when the president isn't around. I've never seen Susie Wiles say something to the president and then go and counteract him or subvert his will behind the scenes. And that's what you want in a staffer. Because as much as I love Susie, the American people didn't elect any staffer. They elected the President of the United States. And what you want, in a staffer is a person who understands they are there to effectuate the will of the American people, and they're there to follow the orders of the duly elected Commander-in-Chief of the United States. And Susie Wiles, we have our disagreements. We agree on much more than we disagree, but I've never seen her be disloyal to the President of the United States, and that makes her the best White House Chief of Staff that I think the President could ask for. And the last thing I'll say is if any of us have learned a lesson from that Vanity Fair article, I hope that the lesson is we should be giving fewer interviews to mainstream media outlets. So
I'm sorry. JD Vance is lecturing people about being two-faced. This is the same guy who called Trump America's Hitler. And he didn't do it in a private conversation, not in a leaked email, in public, on record multiple times. He called Trump a cultural heroine, reprehensible, wondered if he was a cynical asshole or an idiot. And then he became Trump's vice president. And now he throws his own wife and children under the bus repeatedly by constantly saying derogatory stuff about them to stay in Trump's good graces. This is the guy who spent years publicly calling Trump maybe Hitler and is now the loyalty police. I can't. I genuinely cannot. Like, Wiles herself said his conversation was sort of political, which is the most obvious understatement ever. So Vance, whose entire career is built on being a two-faced little bitch, is out here trying to attack somebody for saying things that are objectively true, while he spent years saying things that he didn't even believe. Here's the thing. Vance is not unique. This is what you have to do now to make it in Republicana leadership. You can call somebody Hitler. You can trash their supporters. You can trash your own wife and in-laws and children. You can question everything about them. And then you just pretend like none of that happened and attack anyone who brings it up. Lindsey Graham went from count me out to Trump's golf bestie. Ted Cruzin for a bruisin' went from defending his wife after Trump insulted her to phone banking for the guy. Marco Rubio called Trump a con artist, and now he's Secretary of State. The price of this administration is being willing to memory hole your entire past and act offended when somebody remembers it. It's just the thing you got to do these days. And but what really kills me is Wiles didn't even betray Trump. She didn't turn on him or anything. She just told the truth about what's happening. That's it. That's her crime. Honesty. Vance literally called Trump Hitler and then joined his ticket. But somehow Vance attacking Wiles for disloyalty is what's going on now, while he built his entire existence on abandoning every principle he once claimed to have. The man has no ground to stand on. He's an asshole, but he's our vice president. Look, the chief of staff is supposed to run things around there. She manages the stuff. She coordinates policies. She keeps the train running. She's supposed to be the adult in the room who makes sure everything doesn't just fall to shit and fly off the rails. But when that one person on the record repeatedly admits that everyone's lying about military operations, lying about conducting political prosecutions against their ops and everything, lying about everything not being chaotic, this isn't speculation anymore. And this isn't some bitter ex-employee with an axe to grind. This is the person currently running the place saying, yeah, it's exactly as dysfunctional as you think. She volunteered for these interviews. Nobody forced her. There's no gun to her head. She spent a year telling a Vanity Fair reporter all of this. And then she acted shocked when it made it look bad. Here's what this tells us about how things actually work. There is zero message discipline. The chief of staff gives damaging interviews to Vanity Fair for an entire year, 12 months, calendar year, and nobody stopped her. I've seen more function at startups, and there are zero consequences. In every other administration, or any industry for that matter, this would not be good. But she's still employed, and everyone rallied around her because nothing matters. And reality is like just what you make of it these days. And they can lie about military strikes and prosecutions. And the chief of staff is just like, yeah, they're still lying. Who cares? And then they just deny it later and say, this is the greatest chief of staff and greatest president ever. The truth is like totally negotiable in these circumstances. And if you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to subscribe. Don't forget to hype, turn those notifications on, hit that bell. I'm Lauren Paritra. I am Lauren P across all social channels, and we'll be back with more.